Okay, welcome everyone. Baruch haba, Baruchim habaim. From Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, everyone watching around the world. The Rav is a few minutes late. For people who have been coming every month or watching, we really do start almost on time, but Israel, like everyone else, every place else, has rush hour, and the Rav is almost here. So a few announcements for the people who are here and people who are watching around the world. First of all, especially for people who are here, only because if people order this book outside of Israel, it will not get to you by Pesach. But I want to make sure everyone is aware that Rav Ginsburg has an amazing, amazing commentary on the Haggadah. It's called Sodot Min HaSeder. It is beautifully laid out, and it really goes through Pardes. It goes through Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod of the Haggadah. It has all the different levels. It, like I said, it's very beautifully laid out. It's in Hebrew. But for those who here in Israel, it's tonight it's 50 shekel, or 60 shekel, or 2 for 100. So if you have friends or family who would like a copy, this is your time. For those outside of Israel who will not be able to get it in time, there's always next Pesach. So just in case you forget about it, again, it's called Sodot Min HaSeder, and it's an incredible perush. Continuing with a few announcements, we want to dedicate this shiur for Ilui Neshama, Elta Necha Bat Chaim Nota, that she should have an Aliyah to Neshama. And anyone else who needs a refuah shlema or an aliyat neshama, this learning of Torah should assist their neshamot. One other announcement for the people who are here, I'll announce it again. As you know, we've been moving a little bit from place to place the last few months. But as far as I know, we are back here for the next at least few months, if not longer. Okay. Well, even after Mashiach, we'll learn Torah. So maybe not here. But for the foreseeable future, we are here first Sunday of every month. One other announcement is that Gali Nai is now available or reachable on Facebook. And the name is simply Gali Nai, G-A-L-E-I-N-A-I. And you can connect to the Gali Nai Facebook. And you can get the live broadcast as well over Facebook. So this is a very, very important thing. So until the Rav comes, we're not just going to sit here. So I'll give over some. I don't even have the chance. The Rav just walked in. So I didn't have a chance to say the Torah in the Rav's name, but I will take this opportunity to bless everyone with a Pesach Kasher V'Sameach, and we should see the Geula Shlema this year, and everyone on an individual level should also have not just the feeling, but the consciousness of going from slavery to freedom. And we should see only good things.
Amen. Good afternoon and good morning to everyone around the world. We just heard we're about to enter the festival of Pesach, which is the holiday of liberation, freedom, to the exodus from bondage, to all the limitations. Mitzrayim means limitations, all the limitations of life.
Can you make the loudspeaker a little louder, please? This is the month of Nisan, which is the month of the spring. In the Torah, the name of the month is Chodesh Aviv, which means new growth. New growth is new life. It means that the whole world is renewing itself, coming to life. The winter is a period of hibernation, and now we all are supposed to wake up and to sprout anew, like a little vegetation, a tzemach, which is the name of the Mashiach, a new sprout of life, of hope, of freedom. So the topic this afternoon, this morning, and around the world, is about rejuvenation. About renewal and rejuvenation. The verse we're taught in the Tehillim and Psalms, Titchadesh Kanesher Nevoraychi, may my youth be renewed and rejuvenated like an eagle that every 10 years comes back to life, according to the teaching of Chazal. So in any event, this is the month and this is the time, and that's what Exodus is all about. It's renewal. In Hebrew, the word for renewal is hitchadshut, from the word chadash. Chadash means new. Chadash also means month. Because every month, the new month is the moon appearing anew. Also, after it, so to speak, passed away, all of a sudden it's reborn. And about this month of Nisan, it says, this is the month which is the head of all months. This is the month. The month means the experience and divine service of renewal and rejuvenation. Now, the last few sessions and classes that we've had, we connected the topic to a certain archetypal soul of Israel. And as far as Nisan and HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, this is the month, this is the new time, this is the new year. The Jewish New Year actually begins now, Nisan. So the soul that is associated with this month is the very first soul of Israel, who is Abraham Avinu. So in experiencing renewal, actually we're supposed now in this month to connect ourselves to our first father, the first patriarch, Abraham Avinu. After 19 generations of darkness, a new star, a new light appears on the pane of history, which is it's called the light from the east comes and appears, and that's Abraham Avinu. So the whole world is being renewed together in the merit of the appearance of the first Jew, who is Abraham. As we've contemplated and meditated upon the previous times, we'll try to now, the first thing, to outline or to picture a full, it's called a full partsuf, which means a complete figure of the soul of Abraham Avinu as it's pictured in the Torah. All of the different things the Torah tells us about Abraham Avinu, different events that happened to him in his life, and the interactions that he had with his generation, with the people. There were no Jews in the world at that time, but he was there for everyone. He was there to bring everyone to recognize the truth of one good God, who was the creator of the continual renewal of creation. It was his concept of the creator of God was also the concept of renewal, that every second, every split second, the creator is recreating and renewing all of creation. The three festivals of the Torah, which are Pesach, Passover, and Shavuot, the festival of the weeks, at the conclusion of our counting 7 weeks, and then Sukkot, correspond themselves to the three patriarchs we're taught. So this coming holiday, Pesach, Passover, is the holiday of Abraham. And the whole month is the month of Abraham. The first thing about Abraham, which makes him the first Jew, is his Mesirut Nefesh. That maybe more than any other soul that we read about in the Torah and the Tanakh, he had total self-sacrifice and dedication to his mission on earth. He recognized that people can be born in this world and not know that you have a mission, you have something to perform in the world. But he is the first person that he wakes up in the morning, and even probably at sleep before he wakes up, he's living with a mission. And the mission is to bring light once more after 19 generations of darkness. So he was born, according to the Hebrew calendar, in the year 1948 from the creation of the first man. If we already mentioned this number, it's a very significant number. Obviously, people associate it with something, that Abraham was born year 1948, and until that moment it says that the world was in a state of darkness, and then all of a sudden appears light. After 1,948 years appears light. Darkness in the Torah is also exile. But in Egypt we were in the Egyptian exile. But now, we the Jewish people have been in exile since the destruction of the Second Temple. So the first question to ask is, how many years are we now in exile? So the answer is that first of all you have to decide when, exactly in what year was the destruction of the Second Temple that began the present long, prolonged exile that we're in. There are two opinions according to historians. Some historians say that it was in 68 CE, and others say that it was in 70 CE. If you make a simple calculation of either 68 or 70 and add 1,948 years to the darkness until Abraham is born, you'll see that we're either slightly after that or slightly before. We're just in the year right now between the opinion that the destruction was 68 or the second opinion that the destruction was 70. Because right now, in that year of Abraham being born after such a long period of darkness, so many generations, generation after generation of darkness, exactly 1,948 years. The Arizal teaches us something very, very significant based on Chazal, based on what the sages say about Abraham. The sages ask a question, a simple question. Since Abraham is light, and Abraham has faith in God, and Abraham has continual renewal and rejuvenation, so why didn't God create him first? Why go through all this agony and darkness of 19 generations, 1,948 years of darkness, before you reach Abraham? God could have brought Abraham's soul immediately into the world. And actually, there's an allusion in the Torah that Abraham was present from the very first moment. Because the first verse of the second account of creation reads, Bihi Baram, in the world being created. And that word Bihi Baram is the same letters as Bi Avraham. As we'll soon explain, the most important attribute of the heart, emotion of Abraham, is chesed, is love. And we're taught that Olam Chesed Yibana, the world, is created with chesed, with love, with the attribute or with the soul root of Abraham, as though God is using the soul root of Abraham to create the world. So if he's creating the world with Abraham's soul root, why shouldn't he immediately put Abraham himself, the soul, into a body, and he should be the first man instead of Adam? Adam didn't get his trip together. So Chaval, too bad. If Abraham would have been there, so maybe everything would have been different. For sure everything would have been different. So once more, the sages themselves asked this a simple question: why didn't God immediately bring Abraham into the world? So what's the answer? The answer is that God saw that if I'll now create Adam, and as we said before, Adam will not get his trip together, not do it right. He will be mekalkel, he'll damage his mission. He'll spoil. The word in Hebrew is lekalkel, which means to damage or to spoil. He'll spoil himself and he'll spoil the world that he is there to rectify. So God saw that Abraham has the power to rectify what Adam damaged, what Adam spoiled. But were God to immediately create Abraham, who knows, at the very beginning of reality, with a very dangerous serpent around, who knows what would have happened to Abraham? And if, chas v'shalom, God forbid, Abraham would have got something wrong, and then God would have put Adam into the world, also 19 generations, the 20th generation after Abraham, Adam would not have been able to rectify. Once more, this is a very profound, a very simple but profound statement of Chazal. It says that Abraham has the power to rectify all the things that people did wrong, and all of the darkness upon darkness that was present for generation after generation. All of a sudden comes Abraham, this star from the east, and he begins to correct everything, all of the wrongdoing. That's the essence of a Jew. What's more, had Abraham been the first, he wouldn't have spoiled, it would have been good. So the whole world would be good. Maybe there's nothing so special in that, the whole world being good from the outset, from the very beginning. Maybe that's not the ultimate pleasure, so to speak, of the Creator. What exactly makes pleasure for our Creator, our continual Creator, we can't fathom. It's too deep for us. But perhaps, or certainly if this is the way that he did it, this is the way he runs the world, he knew that Adam is in a dangerous state. Adam did have free choice, but nonetheless, he was very likely to sin, and that's exactly what happened. And God knew that there's only one soul after 19 generations of getting it wrong that can appear and begin to get things right. But would it be the opposite? Adam does not have that spiritual prowess. He doesn't have that power to get things right. He could have been okay himself, but after a long period of darkness and wrong, he could not correct the situation. This is what Chazal says. Once more, the expression is that Adam Harishon Kilkel. So I'm saying it in Hebrew because we're going to also analyze the wording. That Adam is called Adam Harishon, the first man. Adam Harishon Kilkel. And Avraham Avinu Tiken. Our father Abraham, was the connotation of Adam is Adam Harishon, the first man. Adam Harishon. The connotation of Abraham throughout the Torah's Avraham Avinu, our father, our patriarch Abraham. So it's an amazing phenomenon that if you calculate those two phrases, that Adam Harishon Kilkel and Avraham Avinu Tiken, so they equal exactly the same number. The common number that they equal is 867. Since each phrase has 3 words to it, if we divide that by 3, that number 867, the average value of each word is 289. 289 is a very perfect number because it's a square number. Every square number in Kabbalah represents a perfection or consummation. It's 17 squared. 17 is Tov. And that number, 17 squared, 289, equals the second and the third word of the Torah, Bara Elokim. Abraham, as we said before, his very name relates to the word bara, to create. God created, this is all the plan, the divine plan. As we said before, the divine plan is very hard or impossible for us to fathom. But the divine plan is that Adam HaRishon Kilkel, that Adam will spoil, damage, and Abraham Avinu then will come a long time afterwards, Abraham Avinu, and he'll rectify, or begin the rectification. There's another famous Medrash, teaching of the sages, that there were 7 great sins of the world before Abraham appeared on the scene of history. And each sin caused the divine presence to elevate and to recede from this world. Because God's intention in creation is that His divine presence be here in this world, because He created the world for Himself to appear, to be together with us here in this realm, in this state. But sin makes that presence, that divine presence, disappear, as it were, or to recede from this realm. And each sin caused the divine presence to recede and to elevate by one firmament. There are 7 firmaments. First was the sin of Adam, then the sin that Cain killed Evil, and so forth. There were 7 that after the sin of Enosh, and so forth. There were 7 great sins of mankind until Abraham appeared. And those 7 sins made the divine presence recede 7 levels, that the 7 levels correspond to the 7 emotions of the heart, until the last of those 7 sins made the chesed, which is the 7th from below, the love, and the loving kindness, which is the power to create reality and to recreate reality every second, recede and disappear into levels which are above, totally above this reality, because the world was created in 7 days, 6 days, and then Shabbat is the 7th day. And after 7 sins, so the divine presence just totally left reality. Then appeared Abraham, and his essential renewal was to make things reverse, the direction reverse. And he drew down the divine presence from its disappearance into what's above the emotions of creation. And he made it all come back into his emotion, which is the first of the 7 emotions, which is the emotion of chesed. And together with everything appearing in chesed, all of the other levels are all included within loving kindness and love. And it took another 7 generations from Abraham until Moses to make the Shekhinah, the divine presence, descend once more into this world. But it all depends on the reversal that Abraham effected. That no one could have effected that reversal of direction. That God was, so to speak, leaving reality, and all of a second comes Abraham and makes God return into reality. So the very essential difference which Abraham affected is this reversal, that chesed reappeared. And together with chesed reappearing, with loving kindness, love reappearing, all of the other emotions are included therein. And even though it took another 7 generations until Moses came and made with the giving the Torah and the construction of the tabernacle, made the divine presence descend into our world, but it all depends on Abraham. That's why we're taught that Moses is what's great about Moses, is that he's the 7th from Abraham. But it all depends on the first. The first is Abraham. Once more, in order to accomplish all of this, to continually live with a mission, And to have Mesirut Nefesh when he was very young, he had self-sacrifice. Once more, Mesirut Nefesh is self-sacrifice. He had self-sacrifice. He broke his father's idols. His father Terach dealt in idols. He had a store, an idol store. And Abraham did not like his father's occupation, so he simply entered the store and broke all of the idols. God created the world with human nature. Human nature is that a father loves his son, no matter what. But sometimes things can go too far, especially for Terach. So after Terach entered the store and saw that all his idols were broken down, shattered on the floor, and he realized who did it, his son, Abraham, who was his firstborn son. So not only did he not forgive him, he actually handed him over to the king, Nimrod, since the idols were the gods with a not capital G, small g, that they worshipped. So he handed them over to be thrown into the furnace. So this is considered to be the first of the 10 trials that Abraham went through in his life, all with Mesirut Nefesh, with self-sacrifice and dedication. This one is very young. It's not recorded explicitly in the written Torah. It's just alluded to in certain phrases in the written Torah, that he was thrown into the furnace and miraculously he came out alive. In many Hasidic classics, we're taught that a person has to meditate or even imagine as though for the sake of God I'm willing to be thrown into the fire. And actually that means to think of myself as a descendant, as a son of Abraham. And if my father Abraham was like this and could do that, so I also have the same genes in my spiritual build-up, that I'm ready also for the sake of God to be thrown into the fire. That readiness of Mesirut Nefesh, that's the keter, that's the crown of Abraham. Again, we're now going to go shortly through the different, the whole array of the powers of the soul of Abraham as they're represented in the Torah. And his Mesirut Nefesh is self-sacrifice, and once more it's continual, super-conscious. A person can't have in your mind all the time one continual thought. But in the superconscious, it does exist continuously. When a person is living by a mission, that mission is in his crown, is in his superconscious. It is continuously there with him. As far as Abraham is living with this mission from the very first moment that he knew, as we'll go on to explain, that he recognized, he came to know God, the Creator. Abraham is referred to as the first man of faith, Rosh Kol HaMa'amnim, the head of all believers. In the crown itself, there are 3 heads of the crown, we're taught in Kabbalah, the highest of which is faith, simple faith. The first one to have that is Abraham. Ve'amin b'Hashem, he believed, yet simple faith above reason, above mind. The second head of the crown of the superconscious is called divine pleasure. Abraham had 400 coins of silver with which he purchased the Machpelah cave, And according to the Zohar, those 400 silver coins are 400 worlds of infinite pleasure in divinity. If a person is totally identified with love, he's all love, pure love. So love and pleasure also go together. It's called Ahava B'Ta'anugim. Love, which is the greatest, infinite pleasure. So since he is all love, he's also all pleasure. The very first commandment that God commands Abraham is Lech lecha mi'aretzcha, go out of your land and go to the land that I will show you. At the beginning of the third portion of the Torah, Parashat Lech lecha. The word land, we're taught, Eretz, comes from the word ratzon, will, the power of which was the third head, supernal head of the crown. What's more, the crown has three heads: faith, pleasure, and will. All of the three are manifest in Abraham. He's the first to believe. He experiences, he possesses actually, infinite pleasure. And he also, the first commandment that he receives, a commandment itself is will. It's the will of God. That God wants you to do something. So he tells you to do something, commands you. And the first commandment is to leave your state of will and to go to that will, that land that I will show you. It means always being sensitive and hearing, attentive to my will. That's called the promised land. The promised land is the attention not to your will, but to my will, and actually to nullify your will to my will. How does one nullify? Because one knows that everything that happens to him in life is all it's called a cause, a sibah. It's all coming from God. And it's all coming to teach me and actually to point a direction, like a signpost. Everything that happens to me from the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I go to sleep is a sibah, a cause which is a signpost, a siman, where God wants me to go. It's all saying lech lecha. Don't now think where you wanted to go a second ago, but lech lecha, go to where I am going to show you. Right now you don't know where that is, but I'm going to show you where to go. So once more, that's called total nullification of one's own will, which is the will of let's call it the Egyptian will. Any state of limitation in the psyche is Mitzrayim. A person's initial will is a limited will. But as soon as one releases that, there's a state of freedom. And I'm totally attentive to God's will, and everything that He does in the world is once more, it's a finger pointing, a signpost pointing where to go. And to that line that I will show you. So that is the rectification of the third head of the crown, which is called the head of will. So actually, Abraham manifests all of the three heads of the crown. Then we come to the three powers of the mind, which, as we know, are called wisdom and understanding and knowledge. In Hebrew, chokhmah and binah and dat. Wisdom, the first faculty of intelligence, is called the father principle. Abraham is the first father. Not only is he the first father, but his very name, Abraham, comes from the word Av. It begins with the two letters Av, which mean father. when God told Abraham later on to circumcise himself, he said that I'm going to make you the father of all nations, the father of all of mankind, not just of the Jewish people. All nations. He added a hey to his name. Previously it was called Avram, Abram, and now he's called Abraham. And that hey stands for Hamun, for a multitude. Before you were just the father of your own nation, but now I'm making you the father of the multitude of all nations, of all mankind. All mankind in the present and all mankind in the future. Until the Mashiach, until after the Mashiach. You're the father. So father in Kabbalah is wisdom. Before he was given that additional hey, his name Avram read exalted father. Av means father, and the two letters Aram means exalted. So his name was read exalted father, and it's interpreted as Seichel HaNe'elam Mikorayon, exalted wisdom, exalted intellect, intelligence. I mean, there's something innate about Abraham, the first Jew, that innately he was gifted. It's like a child is gifted with different attributes and properties and faculties. He was gifted with a supreme faculty of mind that until that moment in history, no other human being, even though there were great human beings before him, that were not able to change or to illuminate their generation, to illuminate the world was still in a state of darkness. But he was the first to have this exalted level of wisdom. Much more than something innate. And that makes him the father of all mankind to come. How did he use his exalted wisdom? He used it from a very, very small age. Actually, the sages teach us from the age of 3. At the age of 3, he already knew and recognized his Creator. And the Creator appeared to him. Why did he appear to him? Because he contemplated nature. The fact that, once more, now we have a gifted child. We're trying now to picture Abraham, and once more, Abraham is our first archetypal source of the whole Jewish people, and he's also the father of all of humanity. So in addition to all of those super rational properties that he has, the first rational property is he's very, very intelligent. He has exalted intelligence. That's a gift. But he uses it. To use the intelligence that you're given by God, that's already the second property of mind. That's called binah, to contemplate, to meditate, to try to understand. And the sages teach us and explain that Abraham, from the very youngest age, before he was 3, he contemplated. It's called chakira, is the word in Hebrew. Uchakar. He contemplated, investigated. A little child looked, is the sun the creator of the universe? Is the moon the creator of the universe? He contemplated everything that he saw around him. He contemplated, he meditated upon everything, until he came to the recognition that the sun is not the creator, and the moon is not the creator, and there's no physical object which is the creator. And at that moment that he realized that there is a creator, but it's not any physical object whatsoever. These are all creations. God created the sun, God created the moon, God created everything else. At that moment, and this is an experience also which we can try to recall, of every experience, the experience of this month of the Chodesh Aviv that we're going to rejuvenate in ourselves is this experience, that all of a sudden Actually, after negating everything, it's like Maimonides says, at first you have to negate. And at a certain moment, when you negate everything, then God appears. And he says, I am the creator. I am the Balabait. I'm in charge of the world which I created. What is the investigation called the contemplation and then the appearance? And at that moment, Abraham knows. Hikir et boro, that's the expression in Hebrew. He recognized, he knew his creator. Those are the two powers of the mind which are interdependent, which are understanding and knowledge. From understanding, from contemplation and what's called intellectual investigation, he came to know. So actually, the process of his mind, of Abraham's mind, is the exact order of the three faculties of the mind. Wisdom, understand. First, wisdom, that's his gift. What's more, he's innately wise. To be innately wise means to also see the result from the cause. See the future. See what is going to be born from everything that happens, or everything that you see in the present. It's called Haroeh Tanolad. That's a gift that he has. And every Jew has that gift. But then you have to use your mind to contemplate reality and try to figure things out with your rational mind, to figure out what's going on, what's happening. And you have many what's called a hava amina. Hava amina is a first thought. A first thought means maybe the reason is such and such, but then you negate that. You say, no, that's not the reason. That's the process of contemplation. And then you say, maybe the reason is something else. No, that's not the reason. Until after negating all of the first thoughts, it's called the hava amina, then all that you merit, this merit, you merit to knowledge. That merit to knowledge means all of a sudden the true reason, which is God, appears to you. And then you know God. So that's exactly the process. We call it the first, we can even see it as corresponding to the first 3 years of Abraham. That the first year was just simply a year of an innately gifted child. And the second year is the year of contemplation and investigation. And the third year, when he's 3 years old, God appears to him. From that moment on, he knows God. Right, so these are the three intellectual faculties of our first father, which is much more the lesson of this month, the month of the Aviv, of the renewal, the spring. In English, there's a pun on words. The season, spring, is like a springboard. If you get on the spring, you can spring to a very, very high new point in life. Just like Abraham, that he sprung from once more from 19 generations of darkness into a new ray of illumination of light. But after the three intellectual properties, which in Abraham follow one after the other, in Kabbalah we're taught that if a person has this process, first wisdom, and then understanding, and then knowledge, it doesn't have to be in that order. That's the natural order, but in certain souls, the order of appearance is not necessarily that order. But if that is the order, which is the natural order of first wisdom and then understanding the knowledge that we've now described about Abraham, so what is born in the soul is love. What we now just said is called permutation theory, Kabbalistic permutation theory. If there are three intellectual powers, so there's 6 ways to order them. And each one of the 6 ways to order the 3 intellectual faculties gives birth to one of the 6 emotions of the heart. And that permutation, which is the first, that gives birth to the first emotion, which is love, is the direct, the simple, the natural order of first wisdom, then understanding, then knowledge. That's exactly the order of Abraham as we now just described. So what was now born in his soul is tremendous love. Love for all creation. Love for all people. What's more, there were no Jews yet, even though it says that he was on one side, his opinion, his mindset was on one side of the world, and all the people living in his generation were on the other side. So he split from everybody else. At the same time that he split, he loves them and he wants to bring them all into his fold, to fold them on into his faith, into his belief. God calls Abraham in the prophet, the verse reads, Avraham Ohavi, Abraham my lover. The root love in the Torah, to love, appears exactly 42 times in the whole 5 books of Moses. The first appearance of love, as we would expect, is in relation to Abraham. In what context? In the context of his love for his son, Isaac. When God commands Abraham to stand the final of the 10 trials of his life, which is called the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. So he proceeds by saying, take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac. That is the first time in the Torah that the root love appears. That's when the whole Torah, 42 times. Meaning that all of the love of the Torah, which all the love of reality, is encapsulated in this one first appearance of love. Abraham's love for his only son from Sarah was Isaac, who was to be his successor, the second of the 3 patriarchs of the Jewish people. But then what does God say immediately when he says that you love Isaac? So what does he then command him to do? He says, now take him and raise him up, which the simple interpretation of raising him up means to offer him as a sacrifice. At the end, God says no. When he was just about to slaughter his son in sacrifice, he says no. An angel appeared and said, Abraham, Abraham, God doesn't want a human sacrifice. He doesn't want Chas v'shalom, God forbid, to sacrifice their son. It was just a trial. But God doesn't deceive. So what did he mean by raising up your son? So the sages say that means just take him up to the mountain. And the altar was on the mountain. Take him up to the mountain and bring him down again. But in Kabbalah, we're taught much deeper than that. That since the first command, his statement to Abraham was, take your son, your only one, whom you love, and elevate him. What it meant was to elevate your love, your natural love, for your only son that was born when you were 100 years old. Elevate that love to God. Give all of your love for your son. Give it back to God. When you give it back to God, then God will give it back to you. There's nothing wrong with loving your son. As we said before, all will, your independent will, you have to relinquish in order to give to God. That's called go from your land to the land that I will show you. But love, God created love, and it's good to love other people. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to love all souls, all Jewish souls certainly, and in a certain sense to love all things that God created. Ahavat habriot. There's nothing wrong with love, but a person has to be able also to elevate. This was the final trial. Can all of that love be given back as a sacrifice to God? And then God will tell you, you stood the trial. And now you can continue to love your son and to love everything. What is the power to elevate love? So now we reach the inter-inclusion, the deep secret of the binding of Isaac, which is called the inter-inclusion of the two opposite attributes, emotive attributes of Abraham and Isaac. That Abraham's attribute is love, and Isaac's attribute is fear. And at the end of him standing the trial of the binding, God says to him, now I know that you are God-fearing. He doesn't say that now I know you are God-loving. I mean that in standing the trial, he manifests the opposite emotive power, that in general he did not manifest. But in order to stand this trial, he did manifest, he had to manifest, which is, now I know that you fear, not just love. So we're taught in Kabbalah, in Chassidut, that actually that fear is the power, this is the inter-inclusion, that he's possessing the attribute of his son, he's ready to sacrifice his son, but the fear itself, fear is always upward. Love naturally is downward. What's more, in Kabbalah, love is a male power which is downward. And fear is a female power which is upward. If God wants Abraham to elevate the love, how can he elevate the love? Only with called the wing of fear, because love and fear are also referred to in the Zohar as two wings, that without both wings you cannot fly upward. So actually, in order to perform God's true will, which was to elevate the love, he had to manifest the inter-inclusion of fear. Because fear is that second wing, which is actually the essential wing of flying upward. The right wing is also flying. It says that you have to also have to fly downward, to soar. They're soaring downward and they're soaring upward. So the right, you need both. In both directions you need both. But the power to soar downward is the right wing, and the power to soar upward is the left wing. So actually, at this high point, this is the high point of his life, of Abraham, which is the moment of the binding of Isaac. He assumed both together in perfect equilibrium and balance, and thereby he was able to elevate the love by manifesting the fear. And once more, the conclusion is that now the love returns to its natural direction, which is to love everything that God has created for His glory, is the expression. God wants us to love everything. He wants us to fear only Him. As the Baal Shem Tov taught us, do not be afraid of anything, only stand in awe, which is a different type of fear. All fear, awe is just before God. Don't be afraid of anything in the world at all. But as far as love, it's not like that. Love is you should love everything. But in order to really love everything with divine and infinite love, you have to be able, this was once more the trial, the 10th trial, to elevate all of love to God. Then He gives it back to you, to love everything, which is its nature. It's actually what we now said is we said both chesed and both loving kindness of Abraham, which is the most essential emotive attribute, called chesed Abraham. And this month of Pesach, we read the Song of Songs, which is the poem of love between the bride and the groom. That's what we read on Pesach. And it's the epitome of love. Love the Jewish people to God, of God to the Jewish people. And once more, love for everything that God has created for His glory. Glory means light. With love, we reveal the glory, we reveal the light of God in all of reality. Where do we see that Abraham had the third emotive attribute, which is compassion, rachamim, which in Kabbalah is called the power of beauty, of tiferet, which is associated with the third father. Once more, the love is Abraham himself. The inter-inclusion of fear is the Isaac in Abraham. And now we're searching for the inter-inclusion of the Jacob in Abraham. There's a verse that reads that Yaakov asher padat Avram, that Jacob redeemed Abraham. And it's interpreted to read that the very first trial that we mentioned before, after he broke his father's idols and was thrown into the furnace by King Nimrod, he was saved. God saved him from the furnace miraculously in the merit of his grandson yet to be born. So God looked ahead in time. Once more, from his genes is going to be born a grandson called Jacob. And right now, for God who is above time, past, present, and future, all right now in the present moment, looking at Jacob, in his merit he saved Abraham from the fire. That's the way the sages interpret Yaakov asher padat Abraham. How is it interpreted in the classic text of the Chassidut, which is called the Tanya? That sometimes when a person is hard to love somebody else offended you, hurt you, or you see that somebody else is living a very bad life, a harmful life, a damaging life for himself, a damaging life for the community around him. It's hard to simply have love for him. Is there any way to redeem that love? So the Tanya teaches us that the way to redeem the love is through compassion, to recognize that he has a spark, a divine spark in him, but that divine spark is in a state of exile. Just like right now we're before the exodus from the exile. And since the divine spark is in a state of exile, there's tremendous, infinite rachmanos, mercy, compassion on that spark. And if you try to identify with God who has compassion on a part of him that's in exile, another person who is now not living a good life, that experience of mercy will renew, as we said, rejuvenate your experience of love towards that person, towards that soul. So once more, there's one interpretation of Jacob redeeming Abraham, that in the merit of Jacob, God performed the miracle that Abraham was not burnt in the furnace. And the Hasidic interpretation is that in our daily lives, if love for someone has disappeared, even for a good reason, quotes. We must try to renew it through Jacob. That Jacob can renew Abraham by experiencing compassion on that soul. How do we see this in Abraham's life himself, besides the fact that he was saved from the furnace due to the merit of Jacob? It says that we see this in his compassion on his first son, not from Sarah. His first son, who was born 14 years before Isaac, was Ishmael from Hagar. And after God promised, when he commanded Abraham to circumcise himself, and then he promised that his son will be born to Sarah, Abraham said to God, would it only be that Ishmael, who's now 14 years old, or 13 years old, because it was a year before, that Ishmael should live before you, means that he should merit. Meaning that he knew that Ishmael is not the chosen son. The chosen son is the one from Sarah. But nonetheless, as we said before, Abraham had unlimited love, and he also had compassion. And he had compassion on his first son, that this son is going to do bad in the future. Even the very person of Ishmael says, after Isaac was born, he was an older brother, older half-brother. He used to go out in the field and play with him, shoot arrows. Maybe the arrow would kill Isaac. What happened when Sarah saw this? His behavior and his personality, his level of unrighteousness. So she told Abraham to garesh et ha'amazot et benah, to send away the maidservant Hagar and her son. And it says that for Abraham it was very, very difficult to perform what his wife Sarah told him to do. And this is also considered to be one of his 10 trials of his life. But God had to himself appear to Abraham and say to him that whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her voice and do what she says, because Isaac is the one that's going to continue your heritage forever and forever. And once more, Ishmael is actually endangering his life. And since Ishmael is endangering his life, even at that moment, he must be put away, taken away. The fact that Abraham did listen by the command of God to his wife, that corresponds to another property of his soul. That's called the property of hod. Hod is to acknowledge something which is above your power of reason. You don't understand. You don't want to do it. Especially in this particular case, that it's your wife that's telling you what to do, which is against your grain. And God has to intervene and say, listen to your wife. And then it's not, even if God intervenes, it's very, very hard for you to send away your son, your older son. That's the power of hod. Hod is acknowledgement. It's especially acknowledging one's wife. Because it says in the Zohar that Ihi b'hod, she, the wife, is the sfira of hod. And if you have to acknowledge your wife, again, once more, against your grain, and against your the inter-inclusion, so to speak, of Jacob in Abraham. Much more the fact that he had Rachmanos on this kid, which is a bad kid, but a father, he's a father figure. Fathers have mercy on their children, even if they're bad. In a certain way, he was now rectifying his own father, as we said before. His own father did not have mercy on him. He handed him over to the government, his own father. But now he has mercy on his son, who's presently doing bad, is going to do even worse to his true son, which is Isaac. Nonetheless, he has mercy on him. So the fact that he has mercy, there's something good about that mercy. Even though God says to listen to Sarah. In the future, when things will go right, so that mercy of Abraham, just like he has infinite love, he has infinite mercy even on bad people. At a certain stage, the mercy itself will be sufficient to rectify bad. Isaac also followed in the footsteps of his father. He had mercy on his son Esau. He also knew that he was a bad kid. You see that both Abraham was merciful to his bad son, and also Isaac was merciful to his bad son. So to say that that's a wrong emotion, we can't say. It's a good emotion. There's something very, very good about that mercy. But in this world, it had to be limited. Because it was endangering, like in this particular case of Ishmael and Isaac, was endangering the life of Isaac. Now we come to Netzach. Netzach is the willingness of Abraham to go to war. Netzach means victory. The victory of Abraham is his going to war against the 4 kings who had captured his nephew, Lot. In his Ruach HaKodesh, he knew, in his Holy Spirit, he knew that from Lot is going to descend the Mashiach. But even without that divine Spirit, Holy Spirit, in order to save his nephew Lot, he went to war, just a very few people, against the greatest empire of the world of that time. And once more, God handed over the enemies into his hands, which was a great miracle. But there's nothing more evident that this is an expression of Abraham's power of victory. As victory means to be victorious in war. The Ramban, Nachmanides, says that this war is actually the archetypal war of all of history, and it represents, or it teaches us, how will be the war of the Messiah against the enemies. We learned this from this first war that Abraham fought against the 4 kings and was victorious. Hod, the next Firah we already said, that says listening to Sarah. Then comes Yesod. Yesod is foundation. That's very obviously what that is. That is the circumcision, which is also considered to be one of his trials, because he agreed to God's command to circumcise himself at the age of 99, which once more is very, very dangerous, to circumcise yourself at 99. And with that circumcision, he was taught to walk before God. He was given a hay. He was made to be the father of the multitude of nations, as we said before. But he is the first one to be circumcised. Every circumcision of a Jewish child, we say, L'achniso bivrito shel Avraham Avinu. Every circumcision is the covenant that God has created between us, between himself and the Jewish people. That's called the covenant of Abraham. So there's no greater manifestation of the Sphira of foundation, which is the Sphira of the covenant. Also in the body, it's the covenant, the organ of procreation, as the circumcision of Abraham. Then the final one is Malchut. Just like how he's loving, he has love for all. He has compassion for all, even for bad people. At the same time, he went to war. He has both chesed, and chesed is loving kindness, and tiferet beauty, which is compassion and mercy, and netzach, victory. Victory is the beginning of the manifestation of kingship. After he came back victorious from that war, it says that all of the kings of the world came and crowned Abraham as the first king, or as the king of all of the world. So the fact that we're now waiting for the King Mashiach to appear, that we believe in the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. So the picture of Mashiach that we have, of the Messiah that we have in the whole Torah, is Abraham. What else is Malchut about Abraham? He's called the Rosh Kol HaGerim. Not only does he convert people, but he himself is a convert. He's called the Rosh Kol HaGerim, the head of all converts. To be a convert is Malchut, his kingdom in Kabbalah. He's the first archetypal convert, he himself, and then he goes on to convert others. What else is there Malchut about Abraham? The inner property of Malchut is lowliness. He is the first soul in the world to express his existential lowliness. V'anochi afar v'ever. I am dust and ashes. When he speaks and actually argues with God not to destroy the city of stone and Amorah. So he refers to himself in total self-nullification. It's total lowliness. I'm afar, dust and ashes, and that makes him worthy to be the king, because that a true king like David, his inner state of being is one of total selflessness. So actually what we've now done is we've gone through all the, as we've done in previous classes, all of the 10 Shirot, and sure there's much more to explain about Abraham Avinu. The second part that we wanted to speak about this today, which is just about the word Chadash, and Or Chadash, which has to do with Abraham, new light, which is this month and this holiday of Pesach. So apparently we don't have time for that right now, but just enough to say that may Hashem give us true renewal with joy, with a joyful holiday and a joyful exodus from Egypt and a joyful coming of Messiah.
Okay, before we take questions from the Kahal here and people around the world, a few announcements. For those people who came in late or tuned in late, that this shiur is dedicated for a Ilui Neshama for Elta Necha Bat Chaim Nota. And we also want to take this opportunity to thank Gali Nai. Last month did a very, very quick campaign to raise money for better equipment for the live streaming. And it was successful, and the equipment was bought and is being used tonight as we speak. And so we want to thank everyone who donated on very short notice for that wonderful cause. Again, also, for those who came in late, the shiur will be here for the next months for sure. And again, a reminder that you can now be on the Gal Inai Facebook and actually watch this live streamed over Facebook. Galeinai, Gal Inai on Facebook. And one last announcement for those who came in late. The Rav's Haggadah of Pesach is available tonight, 60 shekel or 2 for 100, and it becomes highly, highly recommended. Before we take questions, and tonight we'll start with the people here in this room, we're among friends here. So I'm going to say the following, that I want to thank the Rav for a wonderful, wonderful birthday gift, because right now is beginning my birthday, Zayin Nisan, and my name is Avraham.
That's what we thought about.
and
you have Or Chadash.
right. But even on a deeper level, I've merited to write a number of books that the Rav has given as a skama on. And one of the books I'm working on right now is called Echad Haya Avram. One was Abraham. All about not just Avram, but the simple premise that Avram Avinu was the most influential person who ever lived. That's the premise of the book. But the hashgacha here is Echad Haya Avram. Echad equals 13. And the Rav just explained the whole being of Abraham according to the 13 levels of the Sfirot. So that was like the best birthday present I could possibly get, because it gives me so much new chomer. And of course, the Or Chadash he didn't talk about is the name of my organization. So there's a lot of hashgacha here. And like I said, we're among friends, so I want to set all of this. Okay. Questions from the Kahal here? Either side of the room? Yes.
So the Rav spoke about the importance of the hay, and how the hay was inserted in Sarai and Avram, and Behivaram, and the hay, Behevaram, with the hay God created the world. So my question then is, in Sefer Yetzirah, it speaks about how this month of Nisan is related to the letter Hey, and I was wondering if the Rav would be able to elaborate on the connection there.
Okay, that's...
Okay, as I usually do, just in case people in Kusur can't hear the questions, is the question was asked that the Rav spoke about the importance that the letter Hey was added to Avram's name to be Abraham, and Sarai to be Sarah, and the world is created through the letter Hey. And in the Sefer Yetzirah, this month is created through the letter Hey. So the question was, could the Rav elaborate more on the connection of the letter Hey in this month of Nisan?
First of all, the name of the letter Hey means to appear. It's like Hine, Hey. A new appearance, new light, just like Abraham is a new light to the world. In Sefer Yetzirah, Hey is the letter through which God creates this month of Nisan. It's also the letter that corresponds to the sense of speech. That's why we say every year we teach that the freedom of Pesach, of Passover, which is the holiday of freedom, Zman Chirutenu, is just like the expression around the world is the freedom of speech. And Abraham himself had to have this freedom of speech in order to teach his new understanding with his way. The verse that Avraham just mentioned before, Echad Haya Avraham, that Abraham was one, that's actually the verse from which the sages learn what we spoke about before, that he's on one side of reality, of the world, that everybody is on the other side. Nonetheless, he's trying to bring them all to his side. But he's one means that he's, in the beginning, initially, he's one alone. Not because he wants to be alone, just because he, in the beginning, initially, is the only one that has clarified the true faith in God. The ability to say that, to teach that to the world, is the meaning of the Hey in his name. Once more, the Hey is the letter of this month, and it's the letter of the ability to say things which come from the very innermost point of the heart. It says that Mashiach will come when the heart will be able to say everything that it feels. It's called Liba Lepuma Galia, that at present, exile is a state that you cannot express what you really feel in the unconscious dimensions of the heart. Because it's not revealed to you. Hey is a letter of revelation once more. The innermost point of the heart is unconscious to you yourself. And since it's unconscious to you yourself, certainly you cannot express it. You cannot say it. When Abraham was given that Hey, so he was given once more the revelation of his own inner faith in his superconscious, in his crown, together with the ability to say it and to teach it to the world. That's the essence of the Hey in this month in Abraham.
Okay, another question from the Kahal here.
Concerning what the Rav said about getting our words and devoting them to Hashem, aren't we supposed to believe that the words that Hashem puts in our souls, because they are coming from the Keter, aren't we supposed to believe that the words that Hashem puts in our souls are beyond vision and understanding, and therefore Hashem would like us to pray for the achievement of these words, exactly like Hashem said to Abraham Avinu, "Yitelech b'fanav v'yeh tamim," go before me and be complete and innocent. Either something has to do with this word, like I have said, you have to negate them. We make the inter-inclusion between believing that Hashem puts this word in our soul, and therefore there's something to do with them. And the other side is just how to concentrate and focus them in the direction to Hashem's ways in creating experience science.
Okay, this is a very complex question, and I'll just let the Rav answer it, and we'll understand the question through the answer.
No. First, I didn't get the question. You have to repeat the question.
Okay, if I understood correctly, where is the line, or how do we know, in other words, what thoughts are coming from our will, and what thoughts, in a sense, are being planted or are coming into our mind through Hashem's influence? If I understood correctly, that was the question as to how much do we believe in what's percolating from below, from our heart, our mind, and how much we know it's actually coming from Hashem. So how do we know what to pray for?
Okay, a person has to be an empty vessel, it's called. If he's an empty vessel, then he receives light from above. To become an empty vessel, to receive light from Hashem, one has to nullify to the maximum his ability, his ego. Means that everybody has desires, the desires of his body. Maybe we'll explain this using a teaching of the Arizal about Abraham and about the fact that he recognized God when he was 3 years old. So if he lived to the age of 175, at the age of 3, he was 172 years before he passed away. Means that he knew God for 172 years. And this is alluded to in the verse, which is called Ekev Asher Shema Abraham B'Kodei, and that the 172 is the word for heal. It also means as simply a word in Hebrew, because Abraham heeded to my voice, heard my voice. So from this special word Ekev, the sages learned that for 172 years he served God. In order to serve God, you have to know God. It means that he knew God for 172 years. Meaning, from this we learn that he knew God at the age of 3. What does the Arizal add to this teaching of the sages? He adds that since the word means heal, it means that he knew God only when he rectified his heel. What does that mean? What does it mean to rectify one's heel? It's exactly the question that was now just asked. To rectify the heel means to rectify the mundane things. The heel is what touches ground, touches earth. To rectify one's involvement with mundane reality, things which appear to be not holy, not sacred, not mitzvot, not commandments, eating, drinking, just involved in your daily occupation. The ability to sanctify that, the mundane things, that's called rectifying the heel. And only then can we say that you really know God. So this is a very deep thought that comes from the Ari. Only you can think that a person that sits alone and meditates and reaches a state of the soul even leaving the body, his soul is elevated into a higher world. Maybe that's called knowing God. No, the Arizal says that knowing God is only when you rectify the heel. That's knowing God. When you to rectify the heel means knowing God in mundane reality, in the mundane things that you told me. That also there, you're not doing it for egocentristic reasons. The verse said there's a small phrase that Chazal say that this small phrase is all-inclusive of the whole Torah. It's the essence of the whole Torah. In all of your ways, which means your mundane ways, your ways, not my ways, not my commandments. In all of the things that you do, there you have to know God. That's called rectifying the heel. Already at the age of 3, he knew God in eating and drinking and all of the simple things that a person does. Once more, as we said before, to know God means to be attentive. Be attentive means that you have to be out of yourself. But your question was that maybe a person he can have imagination. People do have imagination. They think maybe that things are coming from God, but it's just coming from their own ego. So it's not a simple endeavor. There's no simple way to get out, which is like Exodus from Egypt, from your own ego, but that's what has to happen. A person has to really do things for the sake of God and to try to know God in his mundane functions throughout the day. And then if he merits, and if you really try, you will merit, because God will help you, then you'll be able to know God in everything.
With the Rav's permission, if I could just add, where you said the pasuk that in a sense Yaakov is fixing Avram. So Ekev, of course, is the root of Yaakov. So you could say that this level of being able to be attentive of the mundane is Yaakov in Avram.
Right. Just to add to that also, the Ekev of Yaakov is the Ekev of Esav. Because he was his hand, the Yud is the hand, and he was called Yaakov because his hand was taking hold of the heel of Esav. So it's actually the ability to rectify the heel of Esav, which is the true mundane, the ultimate mundane.
Okay, we'll take more questions here. We'll be Melamed Zchut. We know that there's a lot of people watching out there, but we have no questions yet. So I'm assuming everyone stayed up so late cleaning for Pesach that even though they're tuned in, they don't have the hit-orurut to ask questions. So any other questions? Yes?
In last week's parsha, there was it says Vayikra with a small olive, and that reflects Moshe's humility. If Avram said, why didn't Avram, why wasn't there a small olive by Avram?
Excellent question. The Rav mentioned that Avram Avinu was the first one to express great humbleness. And the question was, in last week's parsha, the word Vayikra, there's a little aleph that represents Moshe's humbleness. So the question is, so how come when Avram also uses an aleph, Anochi Afar Ve'efer, why isn't there a small aleph there?
The big and the small letters of the Torah are very, very mysterious when they appear and why they appear. There are three souls that express their humility. The first is Abraham, who said, "I am dust and ashes," and the second is Moses, who said, "V'nachnu ma," we are what? Means we are nothing. He was referring to himself together with his brother Aaron. And then finally is King David, who said, "V'anochi todat v'lo ish," I am a worm and not a man. So the first thing is that there's something about the expression of Moses which is truly the greatest of the three expressions, because to say that I'm what, means that I'm simply nothing, nothing altogether. Means that there's no symbol that I give to my humility. Abraham gave a symbol which is afar ve'ever, which is dust and ashes. And King David also gave some symbol, some parable, so to speak, which is a worm and not a man. But Moses didn't use any parable or any symbol, he just said we're nothing. But one of the explanations is that the humility of Moses he also received from Abraham. And that's what we explained before, that Moses said that everything that I have is just because I'm the seventh generation from Abraham. The one that began the process of the returning of the divine presence to this world was Abraham, and I just am following in his footsteps, and all of the seven generations just following in his footsteps. Abraham is called Ne'eman, Matzatet Levavon Ne'eman Lefanecha. He is loyal. One of the words that used in reference to Abraham, he's loyal to God. Afterwards, the second person that says that he is loyal, the word loyal in Hebrew comes from faith. So since Abraham is the first to believe, he's also called the first loyal soul. Ne'eman Lefanecha. But the second person who's called loyal is Moses. B'chol beiti ne'eman, in all of my household, he is loyal. He is loyal to me. He received that from Abraham. In the Sfirot, Abraham and Moses and King David are the first and the middle and the last of the seven emotive powers of the heart. Because Abraham is chesed, loving kindness, and Moses in the heart is netzach, victory and the eternity. And King David, which is netzach is the fourth. Abraham is one, echad haya Abraham. Moses is the fourth, and King David is the seventh. So it's 147. 147 is the first and the middle and the last of the seven. And that first and middle and last, those are the three souls that express their humility. And if the humility of Moses came from the humility of Abraham, so also the humility of David. One of the great sages, his name is the Bal HaRokeach, he says a very beautiful thing. What is the initial letters of the expression of the lowliness? Abraham, the word Afer is the ashes. It begins with an aleph. Moses, his word is Ma. It begins with a mem. And David, King David, his word is Tolat, worm, which begins with a taf. What does those three letters spell? Aleph, mem, taf, emet, truth. So these three together, they create the true expression, the total truth of humility. And truth itself, it says in the Talmud Yerushalmi, that these three letters, Aleph, Mem, and Taf, are the beginning and the middle and the end of the alphabet. So in the same way, Abraham is the beginning, and Moses is the middle, and David is the end. And the three words are Efer, ashes, Ma, what, nothing, and Tolat, worm. But it all comes from Abraham.
Okay, we have a question from Rochelle in Brooklyn, and I'll just read it exactly as it's written here. Is our comprehension of God taking us out of Egypt himself the essence and beginning or root of Avram's understanding?
Right, there are two verses which are similar. There's a verse that says, God says, he speaks to Abraham, and he says, I am the one that has taken you out of Ur Kasdim. That's the place where he was thrust into the furnace. And the Ur Kasdim, actually, the word Ur means fire. So that very expression is what we said before, that there is an expression in the written Torah that very clearly alludes to his being thrown into the fire and coming out alive. And it says, I am God which has taken you out of that place. It's just like the first commandment of the Ten Commandments, that I am God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Also, Abraham himself went to Egypt and he came out. So we're taught that the descent into exile into Egypt and then the coming out, also the archetypal story is Abraham. And it says, Ma'aseh avot siman lebanim, that which happened to the fathers is a sign, once more it's a signpost, as we said before, for the children. And what happened to Abraham, that's what happened to us. He was there just for a few months in Egypt, but we were there for 210 years. Actually in Egypt itself. The beginning of the spiritual exile was actually 40 years, 400 years. Or if we count from the beginning of the covenant of the pieces, which is the covenant over the land of Israel, which is another phenomenon about Abraham which relates him to Malchut, we didn't say before. One of the Malchut properties of Abraham is the first covenant that God made with him, which is the covenant over the land, to give him Israel and how much he loved Israel. He said that his willpower is the third head of the crown, but that reflects itself in the Malchut, is the land itself, the physical land, that he loves so much. And God gives him. So once more, the first covenant was the land. The second covenant is the body, to sanctify his body, which is the circumcision. So they correspond to the two last sefirot. First, the very last one, Malchut, is the land, the physical land of Israel. And circumcision is foundation, as you saw.
Question from Shuli Kleinman in Lakewood, New Jersey. And I'm assuming this relates to what the Rav said about the letter Hey and expression, the ability to express ourselves. So her question is, which steps help us move from our animal soul to the level of midaber, a speaker, which human beings are called speakers?
Right, there are four levels of the physical world that God created for His glory. They're called, the acronym in Hebrew is Datzcham, which stands for four words, Domem, Someach, Chaim, Medaber, which means the inanimate, Domem, and then the vegetable, which is Someach, and then the animal, which is Chai, and then man, which is Medaber. Those correspond to the four letters of Hashem's name, from below up. But what's significant is this maybe is what the person who asked the question had in mind, that the lowest level, which is the inanimate, like a stone is inanimate, is called domem. But in Hebrew, the word domem means silent. Meaning that the process of rising from the very lowest level of reality, which is domem, to the very highest level, which is medaber, speaker, is actually a process from silence to speech. Because the inanimate, below the vegetable and below the animal, the stone, the process is from a stone to a man, from silence to speech. This secret in Kabbalah is called Chashmal. Chash means silence, and Mal means speech. And this is the most mysterious word in the whole Bible, the whole Hebrew Bible. It's the word which appears 3 times in the vision of Ezekiel, called the workings of the divine chariot, which is the deepest part of the Bible. And there this mysterious word appears 3 times, Chashmal, and it's divided into 2 syllables. The first syllable, Chash, means silence, and the second syllable, Mal, means speech. It means it's a process from silence to speech. It means from, as though the stone is transformed into a human speaking, a human being, a speaker. What's more, the reason that God gave us speech is to shine. First of all, let's say a very important thing that comes from the Zohar. It says, Dat Ganiz Bepuma. Knowledge, which is recognition, knowing God, is hidden in the mouth. And it's hidden in the mouth of Abraham. And that's exactly what had to be redeemed. Is Yetziat Mitzrayim, is the Exodus. To redeem that hidden dot in the mouth, giving him the power to speak. When Adam was given the power to speak, it says, Vahi Adam leNefesh Chaya, in the very beginning of Genesis, when Adam is created. It says that Adam became a speaking soul. But Rashi says that phrase, Nefesh Chaya, means that God gave him 2 properties, Dat, De'ah, and Dibur, which go together. Knowledge and Dibur. What does that teach us? It means that speech is given in order to express, to shine one's knowledge. Just if we relate it to Abraham, so his knowledge to know God, and the ability to express it, that's exactly the secret of the Hay of his name. Is it De'ah v'Dibur. We'll say one more thing that we didn't explain in the class. Another property of Dat in Abraham. There's a verse that reads, Ki yeda'ativ leman asher yitzaveh et panav et bito acharav, that God says to Abraham, I have known him. And Chazal interpret that to know means to love. Because know is like the verb that is used even in marital love and marital relation. I have known him because he will teach his children and his household after him to keep the way of God, to do charity and justice in the world. Because of that, I know in advance that part of his, or not simply part, the essential part of his mission is to teach not just his generation, but to teach his children, the generations to come. That's the ultimate expression of his dat. When he speaks, he doesn't just speak for the now, for the present. He's speaking into the future. To say it in the very simplest words, he devotes himself to education. And God has chosen Abraham and has loved Abraham. In this verse it says, because he's an educator. Now, if God knows Abraham because he's an educator, it means that very ability to educate, which means to pass over the knowledge of God to the next generation, to all generations to come, that itself is an expression of his own dat. But God knows him because he himself has dat. And what is that dat, that knowledge that he possesses? That's his power and his dedication to educate all coming generations.
Okay, the next question relates to the beginning of the shiur, when the Rav talked about the year, the number 1948, and the two opinions of when the temple was destroyed, and how this year we're right in between. So therefore, it's an auspicious year of the light of Avram. So the question is, how do we actually bring into revelation this light in ourselves and into our communities, the world, to manifest the reality of Geula, and to serve and to do our missions in truth?
First we have to pray that Hashem gives us the insight to do it. But again, the contemplation is that all of exile is likened to darkness. In secular literature, there's a concept, the Dark Ages, which is only a certain period. Secular people think that we're already out of the Dark Ages. But in truth, so long as we're in exile, we're in the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages began with the destruction of the temple. The temple was a source, was a lighthouse. And when that was destroyed, so now we're in the dark. To contemplate that and to contemplate the saying of the sages that every generation that the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, is not built in that generation, it's as though it was destroyed in that generation. This is something that the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, became very, very emotional about when he said it. When he said that everyone must think that if the temple is not built now, it's destroyed now. And it's all up to us. When he said that, when he quoted this quotation from the sages, that's the time that he lifted his hands and said, Keravataynt, that if you recognize that, you feel that we have to transform the world right now. So once more, that drive that we have, that it's dark, and the temple is not just was destroyed, it's being destroyed right now. And the only thing we can do is totally just devote ourselves to transforming reality right now. That's the appearance that's the soul of Abraham. That's the first Jew. It's that we have to now once more be the first Jew. That the first Jew is the first convert. Think of ourselves as a convert. And so we have to convert the whole world.
Okay, it seems that we've run out of time. I want to thank Rabbi Ginsberg again for a very enlightening shiur. Thank you all for coming here in Yerushalayim. Thank you for all who are tuned in. And I want to apologize if I implied that people were like sleeping in the Chutz La'aretz, because apparently there was a problem with the question box on the site, and then they started coming in. So we should all wake up. Pesach is coming. Geula is coming. Bezrat Hashem.
Chag kasher v'sameach. Be a happy and kosher Pesach.
That sure was just for me.